As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. The average American, they say, soft and decadent. He'll become paralyzed with fear and panic. He'll run away and hide and do nothing to interfere as they strike at the community's power centers. Any all-out revolution must create a state of crisis wherein almost all of the male population would be forced to remain in their homes because of its affluence. It has waxed soft. The motive force behind its life drive is its endless pursuit of prestige, conspicuous consumption, and sensual pleasure. After the stage is properly set, America could be brought to her knees in 90 days. Ladies and gentlemen, the organization behind these preparations has almost unlimited financial resources. Our enemies are deadly serious about their task, and it's nothing short of national suicide for us to continue to ignore their plans and their progress. The strategy calls for the quiet conversion of our government. They have one and only one solution for all problems. More government, and then more and more until it's total government. In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist. Label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
Because I don't hate anybody. Now I want to see every single solitary person on this earth. I want to see their soul saved. Every single solitary person. And each and every one of us that calls ourselves a Christian should pray vehemently for their souls, that we would see them in heaven and forget about all this when we get up there.
Welcome, everybody. It's Armor of Truth Live, number 420. No, it's not that kind of 420. It's a different kind of 420. Well, if you hadn't heard the news, Mamdani, what? Did I say that out loud?
Mamdani.
I didn't mean to say that out loud. That's not what I meant to say at all. Damn Dammy?
Damn Rammy?
I think it's Damn Dammy. Zohran Mamdani, right, that's him. That's who did it. That's who has won the mayoral election in New York, and everybody's in an uproar. You might be excited by it. You might be anxious by it. Well, we want to remind you tonight that this is not the time to be in fear. This is the time to stand firm. This is an opportunity for us. It's going to give us a great opportunity. But the truth about this is that it won't unite New York, it will fracture it. Digital communes, ideological strongholds, and engineered flight aren't unity. They're controlled fragmentation. Now, what Summer's written here, this term controlled fragmentation, there's another article here. How many have we put out this week?
Like 5.
5 or 6 already?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a busy week.
I put out 3 in one day. Yeah, I think that was like yesterday.
Yeah, and so speaking of the fragmentation, before we get into the meat, I don't want to bury the lead too far, but before we get into the meat of this, Oregon's secession push. Is it a grassroots rebellion or the first stage of digital feudalism? Because as we know, as Summer has taught us here over time, balkanization is the oldest strategy in the empire's playbook. Now, of course, as you look through this article, you'll find that there are good reasons. There's about 13 counties in Oregon now that want to become part of Idaho. They want to get out of Oregon because it's becoming, well, let's just be honest.
Portland is ruining everything for them.
So we're going to have to stop calling them blue states. Can't call them red states. But we have to call them communist states.
Yeah.
They're infiltrated. So, and the
strongholds, communist strongholds.
Yeah, strongholds. The Greater Idaho Movement is what it's called. And it would be the right instinct to get away from that. And surely there's elements of the movement that are pure and doing this for the right reason, but you have to be very careful about that because you don't want to fall into the balkanization trap. What we probably should be focused on first of all is, well, it's hard to say because I'm not living where they're living. But the main point, Summer, just in a minute or so, about balkanization, the idea is
right. So do like a Mamdani, mayor that makes everybody flee, or do a situation like what you've done in Portland where the counties want to join in on Idaho to represent them. And so you break the economy up in this way. You weaken really the United States because you're going to see part of what they want to do is break the states up. They want to do that so that it causes, of course, chaos, a lot of money having to handle that. It's exhausting of the resources and also it's emotional, it's exhausting. So it divides the people. So in this atomization process as well, on top of that, not just physical, but as well digital communes. So, things like Cardano that promise autonomy and self-sovereign identity.
South Africa, the Cardano is the South African example, right? That's one of the warnings.
South Africa. Well, South Africa is another example of, how they've fragmented society and basically absorbed it into globalist frameworks. And that's also with the identity politics war, too, that they've done in South Africa as well. And at the end of the day, it's about subverting Western civilization and Christianity. They want to get rid of Christianity. They want to totally rid it from the law. So anyway, with balkanization, if they can fragment the country, like physically, literally, that's great for them because in that chaos, it weakens our economy and it weakens us and atomizes us, makes us more vulnerable. And then, of course, people will think that they can go into these digital communes where they can retrieve their autonomy and where they can retrieve their control. And even these digital communes like Cardano being one for now, they might be able to sort of maintain a bit of control and they do business together. And, it seems like everybody's happy and making money and they've got their independence back and they've got their liberty back. But it's really a big trap. They want to basically it's like a sales pitch. It's the snake oil salesman. And they want to get you in there and get you signed on because once you're signed on with your digital ID and all that, then, it's turnkey for the social credit system. So that's what's happening.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Cardano is an example of a blockchain system?
One of these yes, exactly.
Okay. All right, so that's one of the dangers, right? This is the Mamdani effect, possibly. We'll come back to this in a bit. First,
well, they're counting on it. I mean, it's part of the atomization process.
So we want to be careful that we don't atomize ourselves. We need to. Christians are called to love your neighbor, so we want to work hard at loving our neighbor and not really flee and retreat from the scene, unless a time for that may come. But the point today is
Jeremiah 29:7.
Take the ancient path.
Seek the welfare of your city.
Oh, okay, that and the other pray for the city, seek the welfare of the city, because in it you will find your welfare. And the other one we had the other day was seek the old way, the ancient path.
Oh, that's right. Yes, and seek the ancient paths, the ancient ways. Everything that you need to hold your ground is in the Bible.
So here's an article that Summer has written, which is a summary of Lisa Logan's latest investigations that reveal a silent civic coup already unfolding in our own communities, something that we cannot afford to sleep through. And it has to do with the Dignity Index, Reprogramming America's Cities. And I think one of the main points before we get into that is I want you to understand that when Biden was in office, you remember the Disrespect for Marriage Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. There were a lot. You could tell that there was a definite, unspoken attack on Christianity, on the true church, through the IRS, through hate speech, different ways.
Censorship.
Exactly, right. And so, censorship. We're still suspended on X, which, you know, I mean,
But to be fair, we do have until Friday.
Yeah.
So hopefully by Friday.
I'm not supposed to be talking about it.
No, you're not supposed to be talking about it.
So you didn't hear that? I didn't say that? Let's just rewind to 30 seconds
Pray
ago.
for us.
So when Biden was in office, when Obama was in office, this movement was top down. Now, they don't have the executive branch or for that matter, the House at this time. So the movement it's shifted to a bottom-up movement, going directly. And this is how, of course, we've talked about this a lot. Tyranny is defended through local autonomy. That means you have to be involved, awake, and aware of what's going on in your own hometown and who are your local officials. You have to pay attention to that. And that's yesterday. I'm afraid that might have been a symptom of the Mamdani effect. Everyone's paying attention to what's going on there, and you forgot about your own local elections. Well, they want to attack that. They want to attack it and make it so that you won't have any say-so over your local elections or your local governments anymore. Let me go ahead and break into this. So after Charlie Kirk's assassination, and now with Mamdani, there is a connection. And in this show, we're going to show you the connection to Mamdani and Kirk's murder. Something profoundly revealing has emerged. Not only about the tragedy itself, but about the machinery already waiting to capitalize on it when it happened. Journalist, researcher, Lisa Logan, that's the article that I just showed you, the Democracy with Dignity.
I will drop the link so you guys can follow along with Brad in the article. I'll drop it in the chat.
For the which article?
Democracy with Dignity.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Or do you want to put?
Yeah, I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna try to hustle through all of it.
All righty then.
But yeah.
I'll still drop it in so people can look at it.
All right. So this is based on Lisa Logan's article. Lisa Logan is the host of a YouTube channel called Parents of Patriots and author of the Education Manifesto on Substack.
And maybe you've seen her on with Alex Newman.
Alex Newman, she's been on InfoWars a couple times. Mm-hmm. And she's not like a professional at this. She's doing this as far as I know from talking to her when we spoke to her. Mm-hmm. She's mother. She's a mother, and she cares, and she has these. She has the motivation to do this research, and it's good stuff.
It is. She's done great work.
What she's done is she's pulled back the curtain on a coordinated effort to recast a national act of violence into a moral mandate for speech control, but not just speech control. What this is, as we've been telling you here lately, it is an infiltration that hasn't just begun. It didn't just begin with Biden or Obama or Clinton or Bush. It's been in the works for 100 years. An ideological subversion. And what she reveals in her articles are the fruits, the rotten fruits of all of that. We talk to you about the social gospel, the gaining of political influence. Martin Luther King, who is absolutely not even a Christian, being raised up as this moral icon for America. All of it is ideological subversion. In our last couple of shows, we've charted that for you a little bit, and we'll do a little bit more of that here tonight. But right after Charlie was killed, there were groups. Now, of course, we saw the demons howling and expressing joy and glee at that. You know, that was interesting. But there were also organizations, a coalition of organizations that seemed to come out in lockstep that maybe we didn't see immediately right after that we know now it's been, it's not quite 2 months. What is that, September? Yeah, it's not quite 2 months. Now it's clear. Now it's clear what's going on. And this is what, the reason Lisa Logan has identified this is because she's been writing about these groups for a few years now, really focusing on the education system, pointing out how this is without a doubt an ideological subversion. And to be more specific, it is a Marxist subversion. Western Marxism, neo-Marxism, American Marxism, which is really an oxymoron, isn't it? But what Logan says is, it wasn't just about silencing Charlie Kirk. She exposes a network of networks, a movement of movements. They're called bridge builder organizations operating under the banners of one, for example, is the Dignity Index, something that was started up. Was it the same day he was killed?
Well, they were pushing it within hours. While
the governor of Utah was making press conferences talking about, we're going to find this guy, this is horrible, you know, Charlie Kirk's a great guy, he's also, behind the scenes, pushing this Dignity Index, which we'll explain for you very clearly in just a minute, and you will see so clearly what's happening. Another organization or movement called Disagree Better, Braver Angels, and others. These groups quickly seized the moment to launch a campaign called TurnToward.us under the sentimental language of unity and shared values. Right? It's all about social change. This coalition promotes speech rating systems that literally score language for contempt. At the highest, this is language that promotes dignity, and this is language that promotes contempt.
There is the chart is in the article if you want to show it.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, we'll need that. So what appears to be civility training is in reality a new front in the battle to redefine the First Amendment, to condition citizens to equate moral virtue with compliance. And what was unique about Charlie Kirk? Why might he be a target? Before we get into more details, I'll give you this tidbit. These groups work, they desire to work to set up more coalitions of interfaith movements. What that means is that anyone who promotes or preaches or proclaims Jesus Christ as the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father except through him, is a problem. That's monofaith. There is one God and one Savior, the man, Christ Jesus. That's the Savior, and that's what they look at as a monofaith. Judaism would be a monofaith as well. Islam would also. These are generally a problem for this. It seems like they're very happy to use Islam at this right now because it serves the purpose of an oppressed group, at least in America.
And they historically do not like Christians.
Right. That's another point that will come out in this, definitely, that that the Christians are mainly in the crosshairs, because that is the group that is, just like, as we said with Marx. Marx and Engels both hated Christianity. They hated Charles Spurgeon. Engels particularly hated Charles Spurgeon. They were contemporaries in the UK, because they knew that Christianity is a bottom-up movement that works from the heart outward, and that is very difficult to defeat. And so that's what's dangerous now, is this movement has gone from top down, now it's bottom up. So they stand a chance of being very effective at this. So is it possible? And you'll see some evidence in a minute that will make it very clear that it's not just possible or plausible, but very likely that there were many people that were affiliated with these movements or loosely affiliated with these movements who had foreknowledge of Kirk's killing, the attack. So what these groups really want to do is to condition citizens to equate moral virtue with compliance. Lisa Logan's investigations reveal darker threads. The involvement of activist coders linked to extremist groups. I'll tell you what those extremist groups are in just a minute, so you know who they are. For example, one is the University of Utah's partnership with the Dignity Index and the entanglement of these civic healing projects with the United Nations initiatives, the SDGs, and federal programs like Biden's United We Stand Summit. Here's another little point to put in the board for you. The Biden administration had a covert operation called Arctic Frost. And it was going after hate speech, right? And one of their, maybe even their primary target, but for sure, one of their targets was TPUSA. But more specifically, it was Charlie Kirk. Because he was going around to these universities and preaching a monofaith. He was preaching Christ and him crucified to college students. That's a problem for these people. So the pattern that you'll see points to an expanding public-private apparatus using tragedy to justify algorithmic censorship and ideological conformity, precisely the kind of manipulation that Charlie Kirk spent his career warning against. Now, in Logan's second essay, called The American Color Revolution, is disguised as Democracy with Dignity, gives you an even broader look at this. She traces the origins of the movement to a network of networks, more than 10,000 NGOs, these bridge building organizations. More than 10,000 bridging coalitions operating under the Better Together America ecosystem. Many of their leaders, she shows in her articles, are veterans of USAID, right? And here's what's really interesting. These people who worked for USAID, being paid and having these kinds of trainings funded with your tax dollars, were trained in regime change operations. Now, we're trained for regime change, color revolutions as well, to do these things overseas, but now they've turned their efforts here, locally. Those same color revolution methods are being worked out in your hometown under the rhetoric of depolarization. They seek to remodel the nation from a constitutional republic to a well-being democracy governed by social justice metrics, ranked choice voting, and equity-based economics. In other words, a soft coup by consensus. So these two investigations form a really cold, chilling picture of how speech, governance, and even dissent itself are being re-engineered through moralized language and technocratic scoring systems. What we get from this, from Logan's work, from Summer's writing, and from Chad O. Jackson's work, which we're sharing with you in every show right now, is we get a full picture. The historical, the background, where all this came from, so it helps us to understand what it really is. And then we can see the details of what's going on around us right now so that we can identify it very clearly. We don't have to engage in conspiracy theory because we have the evidence. So this would be a call to discern the counterfeit gospel of dignity that demands silence instead of repentance and consensus instead of conviction. Our findings here demand what Charlie Kirk himself championed to his final days, that Americans must keep America free, not just by defending speech, but by defending the truth itself. Speak it boldly, speak it in love, without apology. So over the last week, yesterday, of course, Mamdani wins the mayoral election. And over the past probably 10 days or more, Tucker Carlson has been excoriated in the media for having Nick Fuentes on his podcast. And they want you to think it's because he had Nick Fuentes on his podcast, but that's really not the case. They're hating on Tucker because he voiced a position about Zionism and Christian Zionism that makes folks pretty uncomfortable. Now, I might not have framed it, I might not have said it the way he did, because I don't think he quite understands all of the theological points there. Right? The claim against Tucker was that he's anti-Semitic for saying that. And again, this brings up the idea, or the charge that we deal with here quite often, that you're anti-Semitic if you don't support Christian Zionism. That you think the church has replaced Israel, like forever, that the Jews are done. There's nothing, God has nothing left for them at all. And that's certainly not the position that we take. It's not classic Reformed theology either. The Bible's pretty clear that there would be talking about the salvation of individual Jews at some point in future, but there's only one people. God only has one people. There's only one way of salvation. And what Christian Zionism and Zionism really put forward, what they believe is that there are two separate gospels. One gospel for Israel and the Jews, which is a salvation that will be realized here in the earth through the land grant. And there's a different gospel for the church, which will be realized in heaven. So you can see the problem with that. You have two gospels, two ways of salvation. So there's a big problem with that. So how do you hold to the biblical view of God's covenant and grace in an age like this, where manipulation and polarization for profit and power are common? We probably won't get to it tonight, but Summer came across another blogger, another influencer on Substack called the Wine Press, who is repeating the same narrative that we found in Courtney Turner's Phoenix Flummoxed. I'm sorry, that's not the title of the article, is it?
The Phoenix Conspiracy.
The Phoenix Conspiracy, right.
And Patrick Wood and Brandon House.
Yeah, and then
and CNN.
A few shows ago. Yeah, they're really repeating. What they're doing is because they don't like Reformed theology, they're going to use the radical left's talking points to make it seem like it's Seven Mountain Mandate or Dominionism.
Well, I would say that it's
false.
talking points coming from somewhere. I think it's, coordinated.
Yeah. Right. Now, there are examples. We also have an article on the Substack now. You can check it out, called Is Charlie Kirk a Racist? And what it deals with is kind of what the Dignity Index is trying to address, or what they are addressing in their own subversive way, we're dealing with it in a straightforward biblical way, and that is how social media narratives can divide, are intended to divide family and friends. And the message in that little that short piece is, don't let a lightning strike social media narrative like, oh, Charlie Kirk's a racist. Let me put this quote up here. A quote that was given no context, was attributed to him falsely.
Well, they took
Do you want to mention that?
Well, I mean, they took what he said and then they actually summarized it in a way that was very manipulative.
Yeah, and so you have people who believe that because they we had someone that we know, sent you.
Well, I mean, she had unfollowed me on Instagram.
And that's
so
what caused
we've all
to write
had
the
this
article.
happen. You know, I didn't even realize it, but I think it probably happened around the time that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And then I just happened to recently notice.
Yeah.
And then I said, was this a mistake, giving her the benefit of the doubt? And no, she just decided that she was going to unfollow me because she felt like I was being too supportive of a racist, and really crushing experience.
So she sent you asked her to send you an example.
I did.
And she sent you an example, and it was
from MSN.
From MSN.
Yeah.
And the example that she sent Summer just so happened to be a quote of Charlie Kirk that had been pushed out by Karen Ataya from the Washington Post, and she had said several other things about Kirk that had no basis in reality, or they were falsely attributed, and she ended up being fired from the Washington Post, a leftist magazine or a leftist paper, for making false claims. But
the retraction never gets attention. It's always,
Then there was a retraction. The Financial Times led with that quote,
right,
as if it was exactly what he said. That he
but it gets buried.
This racist thing. And 8 days later, now it was only 7 hours after Kirk was
6 or 7,
that it was announced that he was dead, that they put this quote out there, say, look, this guy's a racist. 8 days later, they had to retract it. And Ataya was fired, and then but no one ever heard about that retraction.
And the scary part about it is, this is a friend of mine that I've known for years, and we used to spend go grab coffee in the morning after exercise. She lives in Singapore, so she works in corporate in Singapore and works in Dubai, Singapore. And so the propaganda that they're getting is this globalist managerial, news bites. It's somebody who's very busy and doesn't have time to follow what's going on. And so this was her exposure to it. And to be fair, of course, that would be highly offensive if that's indeed the reality of what the situation was. However, it's what it does is it's kind of a microcosm of letting people know, there is a narrative that the global media syndicate, the establishment media, is trying to push, which basically says, anybody who believes in, who thinks that Charlie Kirk was on the right side of history is automatically some sort of white supremacist, bigot, racist. So that's pretty much, and so then to hear that's like her knee-jerk reaction. So anyway, pray for that, please, for us. I've tried to reach out and construct an argument for her and pray that she would receive that. I'm just please don't be a casualty of this propaganda war. Because the things that you guys are being fed over on the other side of the world feeds ultimately, at the end of the day, the United Nations agenda to bring America down. So,
right, there's the quote that was released, and the claim was that Charlie Kirk is a racist. He thinks that black women don't have brain processing power to be taken seriously. Well. And here's the link to the Financial Times retraction, and their statement. What was actually happening there was he wasn't talking about all black women. He was talking about 3 specific black women who were being particularly egregious over the issue.
Who are essentially Marxist agitators.
Yeah.
Hate-craft Marxist agitators. Right. So he was responding to affirmative action.
The response, to put a quote out like this and claim it that say he's a racist and attach this bad smell to him,
That's what they do.
that's a tactic of ideological subversion, where you want to take the strongest advocates for truth among us and make them look suspicious. So you can see New York Times also made false claims that they had to retract. Here's a correction, from the New York Times as well. Schoolyard antics. Also, I put this thread in here about Stephen King, where he said that Charlie Kirk was advocating stoning of gays. Of course, he wasn't. Someone called into his show and said, here, the Bible says this about stoning gays. And it was part of a conversation where Kirk was giving an apologetics response to someone over a phone call. And then Stephen King didn't see that. He didn't see the context. He just repeated something he saw on X, and then he had to come out and apologize. And he was hit pretty hard for it as well. But the problem is you could go on doing this for a long time, showing these examples of how
telling the
this
truth
is done.
falsely and being right wrongly, so any of us could be, like, if you just took a segment of what we were saying and then built a narrative around it, you could pretty much, imply that we were saying all number of things, like it's, you need to look at the full body of what he said and stood for to understand who he was,
And that's what this article is doing. You can see right from the top here, we include in it various quotes, about half a dozen quotes from Charlie Kirk himself and explaining his worldview and what he actually believed on these matters. Quote from George Orwell: "The further a society drifts from truth, the more it will hate those who speak it." Many others. After Stephen King, he got embarrassed himself. The point is that this is human nature on display. It's undeniable. You have to be aware of this within yourself before you react in the same way. Because how many valuable relationships have been strained or ended over abrasive bickering just like this? So let's not fall for it. So you get the full context of what Charlie actually said regarding the racist claim. He loves America because he loves talking with people with whom he disagrees. He's demonstrated respectful engagement with opposing views. It was not just about confrontation, and it certainly wasn't about silencing them. Also in the article here, you can see a link to the actual Charlie Kirk show where he said it. You can get the full context. This link will take you right up to a few minutes before the full context of his comments. And here it's archived here for posterity in case it disappears off of Rumble. So you can see there's an ethical breach, and on and on. You can check this out for yourself because we need to get back over here into this. Now,
it's just also it's like for you guys, like, just to show the power of this global syndicated media apparatus that is literally running the most sophisticated hatecraft psychological operation on humanity. It's like the entire world is being propagandized right now with this hatecraft to divide us. And if they can divide us, then they can conquer us. And so to bring awareness around that, like, here's a real situation. This article came about because of a friendship, and it happened to be impacting the way that she views what's happening in America, what's happening with who Charlie Kirk was, and all the way from the other side of the globe. So,
right, exactly. That's a problem. Okay. So here's the summary article that Summer has prepared here that will help you understand what's going on. And we also have, I think actually we should probably lead off with this video clip.
Disagree Better.
Disagree Better movement. Now this on the left, this guy on the left, this is the governor of Utah. Who was
By the way, this is like all based in like inner development goals.
Yeah.
This is all based in sustainable development, AKA Marxist regime.
So, yeah, now here's an important point that you need as we go into this. It appears from the evidence that the most likely reason that Charlie Kirk was killed in Utah is because that, well, there's very, as you well know, there's very strong presence of Latter-day Saints presence there. The Mormon Church owns Utah. And so they control the legal system there too. You would be able to control a medical examiner. You might be able to control a doctor.
Police
response. Yeah. You
college security.
Definitely would be able to have a very strong controlling influence over
Media.
Utah Valley University. I think
Yeah,
it
the
is.
media coverage, the immediate media coverage as well.
And so if you were wondering why there's not a lot of details coming out of there about this, and you thought it might be the FBI who's obfuscating all of it, and it could be, I'm not saying it's not, it could be both. But the heart of these organizations, these bridge builder organizations, and the one person here we're going to introduce you to in just a moment who had foreknowledge of Kirk's killing, or of the attack, are based in Utah. Pretty interesting. Let's just watch this clip of the Disagree Better movement, which is also related to the Dignity Index.
In America today, the very fabric of our nation is being torn apart. We've never felt more divided, and we're too fixated on our differences. He's black, and he's white. He grew up in the city, and he's a farm boy from Utah. He's a Democrat, and he's a Republican. On paper, we couldn't be more different, and yet, we're both dads. We both love college basketball. We both have really stylish haircuts, and we're both proud Americans. We disagree passionately on lots of issues, but we're friends, and we respect each other. Politics is important, but it shouldn't define us or destroy our relationships. His name is Spencer Cox, and his name is Wes Moore, and we approve this message.
Well, what's wrong with that? That was nice, right? That's a good message, isn't it? Well, let's break into it here so we can show you exactly what's going on here. I'll take you through these two articles from Lisa Logan. I've pored over these things for the past couple days, so I don't have to read it all to you. I'm going to go through and highlight the big points. I'll start with the title. Charlie Kirk's assassination was not just about silencing him. How his death is being used to promote scoring and suppressing everyone's free speech in the name of dignity. Let's start down here, right after Kirk's statement, his tweet here. Hate speech does not legally exist in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech. And all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free. Just like the right to bear arms comes with consequences, it comes with a cost that you must be willing to pay. Freedom also comes with a cost, one you must be willing to pay. You have to keep it. You have to defend it. It doesn't defend itself. And that's what Kirk believed in. That's what he stood for. And these groups are diametrically opposed to this. All right, so there are organizations trying to capitalize on the motives of the alleged killer to silence exactly what Kirk stood for. viewing even his positions, even as they stood there and after he was killed, talking about what a great guy he was and how important it was that he went around to universities to do these one-on-one quick debates with students, most of the time with students who disliked him or openly hated him. There are organizations trying to capitalize on the motives and to gain support for their solutions to prevent such violence in the future. So they say that this is exactly what we want to prevent. This is exactly how a false flag works. Just going to put it out there, and maybe this video will disappear from YouTube now since I said those words. Those words used on YouTube used to be you couldn't say it.
We basically said all the words tonight.
Yeah, I guess there's nothing really to protect. But all of this is contrary to the First Amendment. So 2 days after Charlie was killed, at a press conference at the Utah Capitol, the new website and initiative Turn Toward U.S., obviously a play on the name of Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, was launched. And here it is. And it was launched by a coalition of 7 so-called bridge builder organizations. What we mentioned just a moment ago, the Dignity Index, Governor Cox, who you just saw there, the white guy.
Governor Cox, who has strong ties to
the WEF
and Davos and all of that.
Yeah, and he is firmly embedded within this coalition.
With the Dignity Index specifically.
Yeah. These are called bridge builder organizations. Governor Cox says disagree better. Living room conversations, Braver Angels, Mormon Women for Ethical Government, Waymakers, and the Wheatley Institute at Brigham Young University. What we pointed out for you in the last show, which we won't run through it all again here now, maybe a little bit of it, is that these look exactly like the communist infiltration movements, networks that were present in the United States from
1800s even.
but from right after the Russian Revolution, for sure, with the creation of the CP USA, the Communist Party USA, who got their directions direct from Moscow.
Which, that's behind Moscow is...
there's the communist...
The powers that be that are not known.
The communist movement is the globalist movement. They're one and the same.
That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and there is even something behind the communist movement, and that would be the bloodlines, and you're up into the rarefied air of the Illuminati or the elites or whoever it is that's behind
the people that
scenes.
bankroll this stuff to happen.
Yeah, pulling the strings. All right. So it goes like this. You're going to see this evidence in just a moment, and it's pretty shocking, really. So what does it mean to disagree better? Well, it's a whole lot different than what Charlie Kirk did when he brought his Prove Me Wrong tent to colleges, to campuses, to debate tough issues that polarize the political left and right. What these 7 organizations are actually promoting are discussions that lead to, quote unquote, shared values. Let's get back here. So you can
Approved values. Shared values are approved values, values that you are supposed to think.
Yeah.
Not liberty of conscience, but,
Did you catch all this, though? Waymakers, the Mormon Women for Ethical Government, Waymakers, the Wheatley Institute at Brigham Young University. This is central to. It is centered in Utah.
And there's all kinds of Freemasonry rituals within the Mormon faith.
Yeah, they're extremely similar. One would wonder, why are they so similar? Maybe maybe they come from the same Jewish mysticism. All right. Promoting this idea of shared values, safe spaces. But what that actually requires is subjugation and compromising of monofaith. Compromising your beliefs, not just monofaith, but even if you happen to be a Muslim or a Jew, you have to compromise on that for the greater good, for this shared values, for this social progress.
Which is also, along the way, been known as coexist.
Right. The goal is, coexist. The goal of coexist, just like this, is to meet in the middle on the issues. Mm-hmm. I mean,
don't offend me with your issue. Don't offend
that's
me.
fine if you got a disagreement over what we're going to eat for lunch. But when you're talking about fundamental, foundational truth, there is no meeting in the middle. There's truth and then there's lies.
Truth and then everything else.
But they don't disclose all of this. They don't disclose that the dialogues they host are led by facilitators who've been trained in the Delphi technique, which is a deceptive, manipulative, unethical group dynamics method which exploits human social instincts in order to coerce people into preordained group consensus. That's what meeting in the middle is. Consensus. Group consensus. A predetermined group consensus. One that ultimately moves political policy further and further toward the left.
And I would argue, I had this. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would argue that right now, with the way that the globalists are using the technologies around the world, the way that they're propagandizing people, it's just one giant Delphi technique. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, let's get everybody's out there able to talk about their grievances. Which meanwhile, like we're going to be, the social credit score will kick in at some point with every, and everybody will be ranked based on what they've said. But it's like a Delphi technique, it's like, get your feelings out.
Let me give you an example.
Let yourself be heard.
Here's an example of the Delphi technique. You go down to City Hall because you heard they want to put a roundabout in the middle of your city. Or they have some other policy that you don't particularly care for. You don't want this to happen. They've already determined that they're going to do that thing. But they've invited everyone to come down to City Hall to air your grievances, mm-hmm. And you'll get 3 minutes to speak. And they'll let you speak. They'll let you shout at them and cuss them out if you want to. They'll let you make great arguments that really refute everything they're saying. They'll let you do whatever you want for 3 minutes. And they'll let as many people talk for 3 minutes as show up to talk. But the problem is the outcome has already been determined. And when they build that roundabout or whatever other thing that might be far worse than that in your city or your local community, because they invited everyone down to speak and everyone got to air their disagreements, their support or disagreement with it, then they're justified in saying, well, we gave everyone a chance to speak and
you lost.
Well, what they actually say, according to how Rosa Corey frames it, is they'll say, well, they want you to believe that you were a part of the process. You were allowed to disagree, but more people agreed, and so it passed and it went on. The problem is there was never a legitimate vote about it. This thing was determined beforehand. That's exactly what these groups are doing in your hometown today on education, local government. They want to get rid of the Electoral College so that you can't vote in your conservative representatives anymore. Not only that, they're influencing local health care this way too, to bring in these new models that no one wants or asks for. Now, here's where it starts getting pretty weird, pretty dark. the Dignity Index's strange connection to Kirk's assassination. It is curious. Did I miss the... Here it is. It's curious that one of these organizations, the Dignity Index, has a strange connection to Kirk's assassination. One of the original 22 coders that they hired, that you'll see here below, to assist them in coming up with their 1 to 8 scale for measuring and scoring contempt in speech was this person, Ermia, I guess that's Fanayan. Fanayan. We're going to call her Ermia, okay? Ermia was just exposed. By just exposed, we mean shortly after Kirk's killing. Ermia was just exposed as the leader of the trans-Tifa group called Armed Queers of SLC. How about that? And that group is currently being investigated by the FBI for their connection to Kirk's alleged killer, Tyler Robinson. So let's, here are these two pieces. Founder of Armed Queers Group investigated in Charlie Kirk's shooting as radical trans leftist who advocated violence. Now, and there is Ermia. Man, this is a mess. All these things popping up on here. There's Tyler. How do they expect you to read the article here for all this stuff popping up? There, that's a little better. I'm going to give you the summary here of what this means exactly. What you see here is a fast people search that Lisa Logan did on Ermia, again, who was one of the coders hired to assist them in coming up with this 1 to 8 dignity scale for speech. Of course, a scale that Charlie Kirk, according to their scale, Charlie Kirk would score, actually it would be very high in contempt, because number 8 would be contemptuous speech, would be hate speech. Right. So this is one of the places that Ermia worked was the Hinckley Institute of Politics, Dignity Index coder. According to reports, Ermia, open that one too. That's the Blaze article, I believe. Yeah. FBI investigating. Come on now. FBI investigating a lot more than 20 people in Discord chat related to Kirk assassination. So you might have heard about the Discord chat, the infamous Discord chat that was known of right after Charlie Kirk was killed. Well, this person was on that server, believed to be, allegedly, I will say, on that server. Let me get this little graphic up here for you too. This is a good one. There you go. The armed queers of Salt Lake City. They don't mean arms that have fingers at the end of them. They mean arms that have sights at the end of them and that you load ammunition into. Isn't that odd? Now let's talk about for a minute the Biden administration's operation called Arctic Frost. And here's Ermia again as well, selected as Utah Global Diplomacy's first 7 for 17 award winner, honoring her work to advance, what, Summer? The United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah, so in this particular location where this all happened, the shooting, is one of their main points for, the United Nations. And,
Right. That'll come up in the next, in the next heading. Utah Valley University, particularly, was a hub, was a central node in this. So this post, this X post you're seeing here from Data Republican on X, revealed that Utah Global Diplomacy, an organization which receives grants from the United States State Department for international exchange programs, had been given an award for advancing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They gave the award to Ermia Fanahan for her work and education history. Right, her work and education history raises questions about a possible homegrown activist training pipeline being funded through federal taxpayer dollars. So let's dig a little deeper. Of course, Charlie Kirk was outspoken as a proponent for the United States to pull its finances from the United Nations because he understood the point of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. He knew that they could only be realized through the globalization and domination of all sectors of U.S. society. Where is his? Well, anyway, I got his tweet. It should be right here. Right here it is. He wrote on X, "We should no longer fund blatant anti-Americanism and globalist schemes aimed to destroy our sovereignty." Sounds like an Armor of Truth show from 3 years ago, doesn't it?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so it continues here. Utah Valley University, where Kirk was killed, is a literal hub for the United Nations Association of the United States of America. It's called the UNA-USA. It is a non-governmental organization that works to promote the U.S. commitment to the United Nations and their Sustainable Development Goals through the activities of its Utah International Mountain Forum. Right here, the UIMF.
So, need we really say much more? I mean, I think you can put all the pieces together in your mind, Like, this is, for this to have happened on this particular campus. And it gets worse. The TPUSA event organizers, right? You're going to get into that next, right? Well, just how
on the you're talking about the false TPUSA,
right?
Yeah, that's coming. Yeah, that's coming right up. So this Utah International Mountain Forum is a coalition of student clubs at Utah Valley University that promote the United Nations goals, including American-Israeli Alliance, College Democrats, College Republicans, Foreign Affairs. See there? Both College Republicans and College Democrats under that umbrella. Foreign Affairs, Model United Nations, Rotaract. That's got to be related to the Rotary Club. The Russian Club, and Sustainable Mountain Development. Oddly, two previous TPUSA chapter members at Utah Valley University, Megan Davis and Barrett Thompson, were concurrently members of this UIMF during their time at college. Even though the values of those two clubs do not align, Davis was the liaison for the UNA-USA, and Thompson, a former TPUSA chapter president, wrote in this paper about how the country of Kyrgyzstan could be helped by implementing United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Here's that paper. I won't read it, but I'll show you. There it is. It exists. All right. So you might ask here, it would be a good question. If Charlie Kirk was openly against the United Nations and the SDGs, then why was there a TPUSA chapter, which it's his organization? Why were these chapter members of TPUSA at UVU involved with the United Nations? Why was UVU chosen as a host for his September 10th Prove Me Wrong event, or the American Comeback event? Why was he there? Knowing their tight relationship with the UN. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe that wasn't widely known at the time. Another question for investigators is, was the Dignity Index tied to Biden's Arctic Frost operation, secret operation, that was secretly targeting TPUSA? So there's more revelations here made by Senator Chuck Grassley that the Biden administration weaponized the FBI and the DOJ in order to investigate many conservative organizations, including Kirk's TPUSA, through its Operation Arctic Frost. The Dignity Index has a strange association there, too. The website dignity.us that was launched at Biden's United We Stand summit in 2022 to scale up solutions to counter hate-fueled violence caused by white supremacy was later routed to the Dignity Index. It's also likely not coincidental that one of the 4 former policy advisors Biden chose to travel around the country to search for initiatives to scale up to deal with this problem was John Bridgeland, co-founder of Unite. Unite is the organization that birthed the Dignity Index, the actual 8 points that were chosen to be scaled up.
So, we have to remember the concept of therapeutic totalitarianism. So this is all about nudging people into compliance.
It's for your good.
Right.
This is
totalitarianism. This is what
for your good.
tolerant and kind and loving people do.
Yeah. So this is, I won't play it here, but this clip of Biden here is where Biden mentions the new pluralists in this clip. The new pluralists gave $1 billion towards the efforts that came out of the summit. I don't think it's not the video, but. So Logan has also written other articles and a video on how Bridgeland and Shriver used 3 organizations. Shriver now is a Kennedy. Shriver is a Kennedy. We saw a clip of him on YouTube a couple weeks ago talking about, was it Disagree Better? He wasn't talking about the Dignity Index. He was talking about the Disagree Better movement, right? But he's also associated with the Dignity Index. These 2 guys use 3 organizations they have either co-founded or are on the board of to come into states and completely overhaul state policies. So this is the part that you want to take home with you tonight. This is what is being heavily promoted right now. Go into states, more specifically, go into local communities like yours and ours. And completely overhaul the policies regarding education and elections. And they were doing this even back during the pandemic when it was a top-down federally funded movement. Unite is just one of the players in the Better Together America ecosystem.
Resilience is another one.
Yeah. That's using the veneer of addressing threats to our democracy to push for policies that will actually destroy America's constitutional republic. Once again, this is exactly what the communist infiltration in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, the stuff that Joseph McCarthy had identified and was trying to sound the alarm about.
Joe McCarthy was right. He was on the right side of history.
Yeah, he was right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's not only diminishing free speech protections through this Dignity Index. These civil society organizations are working together to change America's economy from capitalism to an index-based well-being economy that more closely resembles socialism, and to push for election reforms like open primaries, ranked choice voting, and eliminating the Electoral College. This is one of those network of networks.
Right, and we've talked to you guys before. You should be familiar with the well-being economy, which was, coming out of the Club of Rome. And again, it's part of the new engine that drives. It's going to be about, the new moral high ground. This is going to be the new moral order that they're trying to.
The new moral order.
It is the new moral order
The
that they're trying
NMO.
to force on everybody worldwide. That's the Well-Being Economy Alliance.
Yeah. So this gets us into the this idea of civic health project, the civic health project. According to thebatterysf.com, Civic Health Project is building a test platform and data set to help social media platform providers pinpoint and downrank content that causes demonstrable civic harm. So that's hate speech. They're just not using the word hate speech. They're calling it contempt or speech that causes harm. And what it does, it predicts corresponding dangerous shifts in online users' actual attitudes and behaviors to ensure that, in other words, here's the point to take away. In other words, the partners involved with this network are putting mechanisms in place to ensure speech that an armed queer SLC leader and other activist coders labeled as contemptuous. You right? Remember the one Ermia, we just showed you, the armed queer SLC group, advocating violence.
Again, this is about suppressing anything traditional values, Christian.
Right. Yeah, well, of
Yeah.
course. She was one of the coders who decided what this dignity index would be. What, in other words, how will you define what hate speech is or what contemptuous speech is? Well, she decided. She was one of those, she was 1/22nd of the deciding factor, and you can rest assured if she was there, there were
She's
many
the front
other
person for it.
Yeah, there were many other like her because
Yeah.
she was a point person for sure. Noted in this 2022 article that Kirk's TPUSA was a real obstacle to groups like the New Pluralists, who are the funding, that would be the funding mechanism, funding arm, who were trying to secure funding to promote their vision of a pluralistic society with a shared moral ethic. So you got Biden with Operation Arctic Frost, a secret operation particularly to infiltrate or study or shut down or limit the reach of Charlie Kirk. And then you've got this group who are directly connected
To speech.
who had foreknowledge of his killing.
Right.
For more on that, about the foreknowledge in Lisa Logan's article, actually, if you go to Summers' article, you'll get this whole summary I'm giving you here, and you'll get the link to Lisa Logan's article and these other links as well, and you can find out here just what is the argument for how she had foreknowledge. You'll find it here in the Blaze article, particularly, and the New York Post article.
And I did
as
drop
well.
it in the chat again if anybody wants to grab it.
Charlie Kirk was and his organization were a roadblock to the Biden regime's plans and the plans of the New Pluralists and these United We Stand initiatives. They said as much in a 2022 article. He was a real problem because he's a Christian. He has the monofaith view, which is very difficult to water down. Christians aren't likely to say, okay, I'll compromise on the deity of Christ and the way of salvation and all that, just, for the good of the community, because that's not going to bring the good of the community. And this little piece of the article here talks about those monofaith, what we were just saying there. They're problematic. Christianity is problematic. So the question is, did Kirk become a target for silencing because he was too effective at attracting funds to his monofaith action group, his mostly Christian organization. And because he didn't believe that pluralism meant he had to water down his beliefs in order to build bridges with other faith groups. As Lisa Logan points out here, the FBI should certainly investigate that part of it too. She finishes up here saying, one thing's for sure, while there's still more questions than answers surrounding Kirk's assassination, one thing is certain. It's that Kirk would not want his death to be used by groups like Braver Angels, Disagree Better, the Dignity Index, and the like to weaken the First Amendment that he viewed as both the sword and shield of American liberty. It's gross, and both their exploitation of his assassination and their efforts to suppress speech should be called out for what they are and stopped. That's why we're sharing it with you here. As Charlie Kirk would say, keep America free. Amen. And so this is what we're trying to make clear to you here, is that this is the foundation. This is what it looks like, a color revolution. These people were trained. Certain people in this coalition were trained by USAID to foment color revolutions, or in other words, to run a regime change operation in foreign nations. And now they're busy here, and they're not doing it top down, they're doing it bottom up in your hometown.
Right, and we've been talking about SEL and how that's all running in Smart Start with Pritzker's programs and Dolly Parton's library with all the trans books. So this stuff is really creeping. It is imminent. It is here.
It is. Okay, let me, I want to show you a little bit about the Dignity Index, so you'll see that this is certainly, it's certainly just a continuation of the communist infiltration, the social gospel. I did my own footnotes section to her article on this Dignity Index stuff that I'll try to share a little bit from here. Communist infiltration is what we're calling it.
It's a very clinical way of getting people to fall in line, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Man.
as they do, they use language very much as a weapon of control.
Yep. All right, give me a second here and pull this up so I can show you up close what the Dignity Index really is. There it is. I'll just pull it up here on the screen for you. There's the Dignity Index right there. So you can see that. I won't put my notes on the screen. I'll just tell you what they are here. So the Dignity Index, this is from dignity.us. The Dignity Index is designed to ease divisions, prevent violence, and solve problems. The Dignity Index scores distinct phrases along an 8-point scale from contempt to dignity. Lower scores, 1 through 4, reflect divisive language, while higher scores, that's right, I was wrong. The higher scores are good, according to them. 5 through 8 reflect language grounded in dignity. In its pilot season, a trained group of students, supported by the University of Utah's Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute and the Hinckley Institute of Politics, that's where Ermia was, scored selections from candidate speeches, debates, fundraising outreach, social media posts, and campaign ads in Utah's federal congressional races. By focusing on speech and not the speaker, the Dignity Index is designed to draw our attention away from the biases of partisan politics and toward the power we each have to heal our country and each other. So you can see.
So once again, this is also one of the many ways that they're implementing the ministry of truth.
Without a doubt. Let me get this up here for you so you can check it out. Get it in view mode, and let's do a little F11. There we go. Okay. I want to show you so you can see this for yourself. What have I done? Oh, here's a statement I wrote. So what we're doing with these articles, with her articles, and then Chad O. Jackson's documentary series that gives us the history.
MLK Project.
And the articles that Summer has written over this year on these topics. Armor of Truth will supplement Logan's research with historical evidence that will support her findings by demonstrating the who, what, when, where, why, and how of Soviet-style Marxist infiltration and ideological subversion of America's institutions and the hearts and minds of its citizens from the early 20th century to the present. That's what we want to accomplish here as we talk about this. Here's another group called Dem Aid, and here's what I was telling you earlier. Many of the people involved in this movement are actually former employees of USAID and other government agencies that have been trained on how to foment color revolutions to instigate regime change in other countries. Also, through an organization called Dem Aid, these operatives, trained with American taxpayer dollars, are using the same strategies of regime change. In other words, a color revolution is a subversion. You make people feel like, you give them a hero, like George Floyd, to follow. So they're using the same strategies they've utilized to shift culture and overthrow governments now in America. And why? They say to protect democracy from authoritarianism under Donald Trump. Of course. I keep losing my footnotes thing. I don't know what my problem is here. There it is. Okay, so this is on page 8. I just want to show you this dignity index stuff so you can... There we go. So here's what I was just reading for you right here. Take special note of this. By focusing on the speech and not the speaker. Why? Is the speaker not important? Is the worldview, is what truth they're grounded in not important? You can see the problem with that. It's not about, see, when they say dignity, they're not talking about the dignity that is understood from being made in the image of God. They're talking about a coerced social standard. And then they say here, the dignity index is designed to draw our attention away from the biases of partisan politics. Another way to say that would be to draw our attention away from the truth.
Right.
Why we believe what we believe.
I've experienced this too with my friend's son, who is now first year at Georgia State. And he was like, can we just not talk about your political ideology? You know?
And you weren't talking about politics, were you?
No.
You're talking about moral issues.
I was talking about moral issues.
Yeah.
And he just shut me down with, I don't want to hear about your political ideology.
So that's the evidence.
And I was like, ooh, okay, you know?
That what you're, we talked about this before, but
have.
What you're pointing out there is that's the evidence of social emotional learning in the schools.
It is.
These ideas have already been embedded into your children. And the communist infiltration, the Marxist infiltration, this ideology has affected and influenced all of us. We have to be aware of that. If you feel like you haven't been, well, you need to check yourself, because we've grown up.
Just understand that that's what's happening, you know? Like when something like that, when they say something like that to you, you know, it's like, okay, you realize it's like we're all communicating in sound bites, you know, because if you hear this certain grouping of words together, you're just automatically going to have knee-jerk reactions. You know what I mean? Like that are supposed to be like, you know, either you're put in the category of the dissident, or you're put in the category of the dignity index, being on the favorable scale of the dignity index.
This part right here, I didn't show you this yet, but I found this in that research yesterday when I disappeared upstairs for several hours. Taken from page 3 of the Dignity Index Utah Pilot Project Technical Summary. So that is this document right here from January 2023. Again, is it not? It's all centered in Utah. And that's where Kirk went down. So check this part out right here. The Dignity Index relies on one of the most ancient tools for social change. Conscience. When we see how often we use contempt and how harmful it is, we see that we're a part of the problem. And that makes us a part of the solution. Do you hear what that is? We're a part of the problem. That's just like what Vodi wrote about when he wrote about ethnic Gnosticism, but it's the other way around.
And it's also what we know about how they want to make humanity the enemy. Like they're treating us as enemy number one, humanity.
Yes.
We are the problem to be solved.
Yeah, that's climate change. That's at the heart of climate change and all of it.
And food scarcity and resources. And
so it's a
reparations.
It's a reframing of original sin.
It is.
So
without Christ, so you're not gonna have the power to overcome your sin.
Yeah, I was going to jump into that. I think I'll hang on for just a minute because here's what you need to see. The Dignity Index relies on one of the most ancient tools for social change. We pointed that out. One of the most ancient tools for social change, which is the conscience. Coercing conscience. Manufacturing consent.
Right.
I mean, come on, guys. Who do you think you're fooling?
And that's what the Religious Liberty Commission is doing. That's why we've been screaming from the rooftops about all of these, the Faith Office, the White House Office of Faith, and the Religious Liberty Commission, all of these things, they're meant, the cognitive liberty, it's just like social justice instead of biblical justice. They're reframing everything, moving the goalposts forward and getting you to start from a different point, the point in which they want you to start.
And here's an example of what you just said. Here's the point. They say that they point out also scapegoating is a key underlying cause of division. Blaming everything on someone, and that contempt is what leads to scapegoating. They're describing exactly what happened to Charlie Kirk. But anyway, they say that contemptuous speech creates and magnifies divisions between people, whereas dignified speech brings people together. That's false. You can be very dignified in telling someone the truth, like the gospel.
Right.
And they might reject it and run away from you and be mad at you and hate you.
Or you can be very sneaky and deceptive while using supposedly nice language. Someone's
reaction to the truth that you tell them is not an indicator. It is not the justifier of whether or not that thing was true.
And let's be honest, obviously they're targeting, the number one target is biblical Christianity. And there are things in the Bible that are offensive, and they want to ensure that those things will not be said, that those things will be suppressed.
They say here, yes, they say that America's divisions are not, these are the three basic findings from this technical summary. America's divisions are not caused by disagreement, but by contempt. Divisions are not caused by disagreement. I mean, that's just a fallacy of fallacies.
The truth divides,
yes.
And also the truth sets you free. It's the gospel that sets the captives free.
This is actually, I just noticed here, they're trying to present a logical argument with two premises and a conclusion. So it's America's divisions are not caused by disagreement, but by contempt. Second premise, putting a spotlight on dignity and contempt will promote more dignity and less contempt. Conclusion, the best way to put a spotlight on dignity and contempt is to measure them. Mm-hmm. But what about the truth? Anyway, Unite decided to initially focus on scoring political speech only. So as far as it was in 2023, they were focused only on political speech because they were very inspired by 2016 when Trump ran, and that's what they were pointing out. Look at all of the Look at all the hateful speech that went on then.
Yeah, and Michelle in the chat just brought up a good point, and I saw that episode too. Dr. Tony Costa talking about how in Canada they're censoring the Bible there, so that's happening. And so it's like here's a scoring system, and this is their way of sort of like revelation of the method, like, hey guys, here's the system. Like if you don't want to be penalized in this new system and you want to be a good global citizen, here's your scale, and you need to measure where you're going to be on that scale, because guess what? You're going to have some privileges revoked if you don't. And by the way, again, it's like stopping them from, it's stopping you from giving people the saving power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check this part out here. The pilot was an opportunity to observe how people of differing political backgrounds could be trained. Could be trained to apply the dignity index to consistently identify dignity and contempt in a variety of political speech, particularly in their own. Right? They could be trained to do this. Moreover, introducing and valuing dignified speech in political campaigns resonated with members of the public because the way they framed it. All right, we just all want to get along. Who's going to disagree with that? All right. Many of those who worked on the project reported they noticed themselves trying to use more dignified speech. So it worked, in other words. People were willing to compromise on the truth to meet in the middle. Seeking out more dignified news coverage, right? Don't be watching those YouTubers over there who are just, they're full of contempt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I'm looking at this clip. Liberal minister Mark Miller suggests prosecuting people for preaching Bible verses he finds hateful. So that's going on up in Canada.
It says here, the Dignity Index challenged the assumption that current divisions between Americans are caused by... They're saying America's divisions between people are not caused by large historical or economic trends that lie beyond individual action. And they offered evidence that it's contempt. It's contempt that causes these divisions and dignity. So it's behavior. Contempt.
Well, this is like the inversion of reality, right? I mean, because obviously the loving thing to do is speak truth to someone.
Speak the truth
but
in love.
They've reversed it.
This is the whole point.
This is the inversion.
Good. I'm glad you said it, because that's the whole point. What Charlie Kirk did, and did very well,
was speak love. Speak
the truth
in love. Yes.
One-on-one with
Right.
people who, most of the time, people who hated him. Mm-hmm. And as I found out, a lot of them that wanted him dead. And he did an excellent job of speaking the truth in love to these people and demonstrating that. And that's the opposite. They're not interested in speaking the truth in love. They're interested in speaking the way we want you to speak.
Well, this is about suppressing the knowledge of God.
Right. It is, completely.
I mean, that's just what it's about. There's no other thing that this is the goal.
The main reason that they cite in this technical summary and other documentation for why they want to do this was Trump's election in 2016. Also, the events in Charlottesville shortly after that. Because they said that what Trump's election and in the fascism in Charlotte represented the rise of fascism and a threat to our democracy that needs to be urgently addressed. Out of this concern, a group called the Listen First Project was born.
This reminds me of that Ronald Reagan quote where he says, if fascism ever comes to America, it will come in the name of liberalism, you know?
Yeah.
And that when they cry about the fascists, well, you know what? They are the fascists.
Yeah, so back as early as 2016, after that, because of that, this Listen First Project, this coalition brought together 500 other groups from all around the nation. Groups from social justice, racial justice, immigration reform, pro-open borders, systems change, election reform, interfaith, and philanthropy sectors. And the reason was for intra-movement organizing, right? Getting groups that wouldn't normally agree to come together and compromise, to manufacture consent, to coerce their language. In other words, they do this to combat that perceived threat of fascism and authoritarianism in Donald Trump.
Well, it's just like what we've experienced with Patrick Wood and Brandon Howes recently, where they're the ones that are over there clamoring that, hey, we're the Christians over here.
Yeah.
We're the Christians, you know, and clearly major red flags with everything that they've been espousing. So
here's one of the. This is important. This is interesting here too. The Mediators Foundation, who was founded by Mark Gerzon, who's also listed as a core partner in this coalition. You can check the article for that. What he was able to do was to bring together philanthropists or billionaires from the left and the right. In fact, he got George Soros and the Koch brothers, Soros being the left and the Koch brothers being representing the right. He got them to meet to talk about how they could use their finances collaboratively to work on this common agenda, our common agenda. And what's interesting in the article, Lisa points out here, is that he hints that it most likely took place at the Rockefeller estate. That's no surprise, is it? Right? So here's a strategy I want to share with you. One of the current strategies that you will see going on around you right now is a strategy to generate democracy using the 4 Bs: blocking, building, bridging, and belonging. And if that doesn't work, they use the unwritten B of breaking, which means breaking America's systems and institutions. This is how they talk. This is how they talk in the webinar that Logan gives a
these are
link to.
systems disruptors, systems changers. This is how they do it. They literally want to break everything and reset everything. That's why it's called the reset.
Right. These bridge building organizations, these bridging conversations. This is important here. These groups in the Listen First coalition. To the groups in this Listen First coalition, conversations that prioritize understanding means using dialogue guided by facilitators. We just showed you one of those facilitators, the Armed Queers SLC. That's one of the facilitators they're talking about. To bridge in the bridging movement, to convince citizens that we need to shift collectively toward a new America. That's literally the name of Soros organization connected to the democracy movement. So really what they want to do is block things that undermine democracy by changing voting. And this is the section where she talks about, first of all, a little history. The original colonies here, before the founding of the nation, when they expanded to the West, the creation of the Electoral College ensured that even people in what we now call flyover states with less dense populations and acres of farmland felt represented and had a say in how our republic voted. So that the idea of the Electoral College is so that the big city centers don't determine policy for everyone else, like what you see in Oregon right now, where people who live in the more far-flung areas are being influenced by the concentration of people in leftists in Portland. That's why the Electoral College is important, because it helps prevent that. And that's why they want to destroy the Electoral College. The new pluralist movement does not define pluralism as a republic, but as a democracy, mob rule. They want to block or do away with the Electoral College to ensure those conservatives in flyover red states can't ever elect someone like Donald Trump again, or any conservative for that matter. So they're not bipartisan. They're not transpartisan. They like to call themselves that, but they're not that. They're all leftists pretending to be centrists who are in their own echo chambers. Okay, so that they want to create what they call a wise economy. All right, and that means this, basically, the summary. They want to move us from a GDP, a gross domestic product, which is how capitalism is measured, to the well-being economy, which is a resource-based economy. In other words, just boil it all down, they want to take us from capitalism to communism. Socialism, of course, but communism is the ultimate goal, right? And here's one last piece that you want to hear about how Trump actually helped us. The framework dictated that federal funding be allocated through an equity/social justice lens. It allowed large sums of money from omnibus spending packages like the Inflation Reduction Act passed by Congress to help recover from the pandemic and build resilience toward future crises to be funneled to grant applicants that were prioritized or approved for tackling issues like climate justice. If you don't know what climate justice is, that's the claim that people of color, the global south, they like to use that term now, that's popular, that people of color are disproportionately affected by climate change and therefore needed a lion's share of the funding to put environmental measures in place in their communities. That funding would go to something like USAID, and then USAID would spend it on whatever the hell they wanted to spend it on, particularly Marxist activism. Many of the green organizations that received this money were radical front groups who were actually using that grant money to support activities and issues that go against American interests. Now listen to this. When Trump took office, his new EPA administrator, Lee Zeldin, discovered this and canceled many of the fraudulent EPA grants that were also tied to this arm of the federal plan, which Lisa wrote about a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
And also reversed the executive order Biden issued to put into place, to put all this in place was revealed, to put the federal plan in place. He repealed the federal plan. They're now scheming. This is where they're not going to be top down anymore. Now they're bottom up. It says they're now scheming to put their plans into place in partnership with the democracy movement, but their approach will have to be different since they don't have control of the White House anymore. And that's the point that we want to make to you tonight. These civic hubs, Summer taught me, your article, you'll find out about Summer's article, which summarizes Lisa's work here, is explaining what the civic hubs are. Instead of a federal top-down approach to funding, this time around, because they don't have the executive branch or the House, now their plan is to assemble and execute their plan from the bottom up using rebuilding democracy as a pretext to install this thriving together civic hubs in every city and town. These civic hubs, this is what you have to look for, will essentially be unelected citizen assemblies that will democratize the way decisions are made on how localities spend their funds, replacing elected and accountable officials chosen to represent the interests of the people with these, what they call them, citizen assemblies who've been placed there and trained to put forward these ideas. Civic hubs will ensure that a city's wealth will be distributed through that same equity, social justice framework that the federal plan set up, ensuring that groups that claim to be disadvantaged and issues related to their social determinants of health, low-income housing, climate justice, are prioritized. I think this summary will be helpful here. What you learn here is that the idea that the disagree better, bridging, and depolarization movement is really a dirty trick to fundamentally change America's economy and governance. Charlie Kirk's assassination, planned or not, and it sure does look like it might have been, has provided a national stage to launch their initiatives. Right? They never let a crisis go to waste, and if you have to create one, create one. In subsequent articles, Logan says here she's going to be writing about to show you how these same organizations are involved in shifting entire cities, culture, and leadership through international exchange programs and how they've hijacked America's 250th birthday celebration to use their version of civic renewal as a lever to change all local policies. And so that's what Summer has in her summary article about Lisa's work. And that's exactly what we're really trying to do and what we really want to do for those of you who
we want to make you aware
read.
of this, yeah. So when you see resilience and thriving together and, all of these terms, this language, you're going to recognize it in your own community. Maybe you can, we're actually going to put together some talking points for it so that you can take it to your mayor or your town hall and maybe grab an appointment with them and just let them be aware of it. Like, hey, have you seen this?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's our duty here. That's what I just read that little mission statement or about all of this right now. And
right. And so it's important to once again say, like, all of this sounds really great, right? But I mean, that's how it works.
I guess.
If
you don't know better, it sounds
they've
great.
promised you the sun, moon, and stars, but actually what they're doing is transferring wealth and power from the people to them. And in the end, what's supposed to be this liberation for people that they've manipulated people into thinking that the various groups will have some sort of liberation is really the greatest colonization we've ever seen on the planet if they get their way. Like, we're all going to be a neo-serf class. This doesn't end up as anybody gets to suddenly have this amazing quality of life and do what they will, and you know what I mean? Do well. They're all hoping they're going to get to do as thou wilt, or many are. But, it's so... I think there's not a screen right now.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's in the black.
There you go. I was trying to show you. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, so it's important to just remind everybody of this, that what they promise, they promise everything, and what we're going to get at the end of this is, what they said, like, you'll own nothing and be happy. Because based on their credentials...
They'll define happy, though.
Yeah, they're going to define happy for you, and you're going to be happy. And then if you're not happy, well, here's a suicide pod.
Exactly. I forgot about Dr. Death. We have that article, too.
The other thing that's going on, too, I don't know if you guys have watched on YouTube. There's a channel on YouTube. It's like the Texas... What is it called? The Texas Project or something like this. But, man, guys, you have to brace yourself and pray before you watch. But...
what is that? I'm not sure.
The channel. What do you mean? What is what?
What you're talking about?
I'm talking about the fentanyl crisis and the cannabis, the cannabis psychosis, and I've watched like many of those, and the person has done a really excellent job of chronicling what's happening, and it's so freaking astounding. I mean, it's like 200 people a day.
It's so freaking astounding. Now that
200 people a day.
That's an endorsement, if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
So freaking astounding.
It is. Well, no, what I'm talking about is it's astounding the number of people that are dying to fentanyl. And then also with cannabis, something I want to say that is I've watched so many of these testimonies, interviews, people that have died and stuff, and it's like, I had no idea. I'm not, I haven't used drugs, praise God, for years and years and years, and I'm totally out from that system. But like, apparently, they've popularized like marijuana, but the marijuana is like, instead of like 2%, it's like 20% and 40% and 60%. And people are going into psychosis and even like killing people and doing crazy stuff. So, be careful, because even though they try to sort of romanticize that stuff and say that it's some sort of healing tonic, you can be a perfectly normal person and still have a psychotic break while on that stuff. So, so many different ways that they're coming at us, like so many different angles. It's wild. It's really wild.
Yeah, it's interesting times. Before I finish up here, I want to share. Here's can I get a focus there? This is called. That's gonna be hard to do. The Crisis of the Two Constitutions by Charles Kessler. this will chart for you very clearly what happened at the time of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Our nation split basically into two different nations. One group of people who are originalists, and was what we would be, who believed that the Constitution is not infallible and not perfect, but sufficient in its original form for everything that we might encounter here as citizens. And then the other side are the people who believe the Constitution is a living document that should be updated as our morality evolves or as our needs evolve. And here's another one. If you want to understand the worldview behind all of this, which, of course, you know, the ideology is Marxism, communism, American Marxism, which is a weird thing to say, but this will help you understand in great detail the history of it. This is Martin Erdman's book, The Triumph of Progressivism.
And they also have a Cliff Notes version of that.
They do, yeah. A short version that's
a workbook.
Take you about 20 minutes to get through. This will take you about 7 years to get through, but it's pretty thick, you see. But a religious quest for an ideal society. You see, that's what they think they're creating there. So as we think biblically on this, John 8:31, 32 and 36, what is freedom? Freedom is truth. If you abide in my word and you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Verse 36, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. So freedom begins not with a social consensus or creating the ideal society. It doesn't come about by a Seven Mountain Mandate or a Dominionism project or psychological comfort. Freedom begins with the revealed truth of Christ. America doesn't exist in the form in which it was founded without that truth. Any system that redefines freedom as conformity to ideological dignity is enslaving rather than liberating. They'll call it liberty because that's what the serpent did. But it wasn't liberty. It was just the temptation and the seduction to create your own moral order apart from God. The genuine liberator is not a government index, but the living word that sanctifies. John 17:17. Of course, Isaiah 5:20 tells us about the inversion of truth, the inversion of morality. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. The Dignity Index and Disagree Better campaigns substitute moral categories. Speech that exposes sin or falsehood is branded as hateful, while rhetoric advancing rebellion against God is labeled as dignified. Isaiah's warning here in Isaiah 5:20 unmasks this whole inversion as a mark of societal judgment. When discernment collapses, tyranny is inevitable. We've said this a million times, right? When you try to recover the constitutional republic without the moral foundation that restrained evil, tyranny is inevitable. Even though it's a constitutional republic, you believe it to be, without that foundation, you're just going to start a new process of tyranny. Amos 5:10-15. They hate him who reproves in the gate, and they abhor him who speaks the truth. Amos here is talking about a nation that punishes those who confront injustice, like Charlie Kirk, right? We need 1 million Charlie Kirks now. When culture despises correction, it turns every gate, the place of public discourse, the public square, into an echo chamber. Charlie Kirk's public debates reflected the prophetic calling to reason openly in the gate. So when they tried to silence him, that mirrors the moral decay in Israel that Amos is talking about. Galatians 4:16 says, "Have I then become your enemy by telling you the truth? According to the Dignity Index, yes. But Paul here is given a rhetorical question. That exposes the hostility that these groups and these people have, those whose identity depends on lies, founded on lies. So modern bridge building movements often demand this emotional affirmation over objective truth. The Christian's task is not to maintain comfort, one of my idols, by the way. It's not our task to seek out comfort. Our task is to speak the truth in love, Ephesians 4:15, even when the truth is labeled as divisive. Also, 2 Corinthians 10, 4 and 5. I'm trying to pull something up for you guys. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. And it ends up saying, take every thought captive to obey Christ. See, we tear down arguments and strongholds, not people. And if you noticed in that Dignity Index, where I was reading that for you there, we focus on the message and not the person, right? You can see how the serpent is at work there, trying to take something from the Scripture and twist it. As Christians, we wage ideological warfare with Scripture and reason restrained under Christ's lordship. Reason restrained through scriptural truth. But consensus building, apart from the truth of Christ, is counterfeit peace. So the church today, the call, is for us to confront false philosophies, whether they're technocratic or collectivist, communist or Islamist. Confront them. Confront anything that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. Romans 1, 18 through 25. For the wrath of God is revealed against men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Against people, against anyone. Speech codes and algorithmic civility are just modern instruments of suppression. It's another way to suppress the truth in unrighteousness. They don't protect human dignity. They conceal rebellion against God's moral law. What Paul is outlining here is the kind of progression he's outlining is suppression of truth, and then comes idolatry, and then comes moral confusion, and then comes the darkened mind, and all kinds of evil. That is precisely what follows when nations exchange divine truth for human ideology. Proverbs 29:25. The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. Speech control systems exploit man's fear of social rejection. And that's really what the Dignity Index is about. Being rejected or socially. You don't want to say that thing because all these people are going to hate you. You don't want to say that Christ is the only way, because then these people are going to be offended. And then that would be bad. Well, Christian courage rests in the fear of God, not maintaining respectability in front of pagans. True dignity comes from bearing God. Our dignity comes from the fact that we bear the image of God. It doesn't come from algorithmic approval, all right? And then that reminds me of one of Summer's favorite verses here. Acts chapter 4, 18 through 20, where we see these disciples being hauled in front of the religious leaders, the court of that day. Whether it is right in the sight of God to listen to you rather than to God, you must judge. For we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard. And so we must obey God rather than man. This is Peter and John who got in trouble here. They refused to be silenced. And that's the archetype for you and me, all of us here today. That's the model for Christian civil disobedience when these powerful organizations or the government itself outlaws truth. Their speech crime, Peter and John's speech crime, was proclaiming Christ. And it is the same today as it was then. They don't hate the fact that you're a Christian. They hate that name. They hate the name of Christ. They hate Him. They hate that truth. But divine command, the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, and our cultural mandate, the three duties of every Christian, outweigh every human restriction. So that same resolve defines our faithful witness today. And in Psalm 2, why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves against the Lord and against his anointed, but God is not mocked. The passage there says that he laughs at this. Behind every technocratic or ideological scheme to silence God's truth lies a spiritual rebellion. The world plots to unseat divine authority, but God laughs at their futility. Christ reigns. He reigns now. And his decree, you shall break them with a rod of iron, assures believers that every counterfeit kingdom will fall. As we've said many times, when a society abandons objective moral order and suppresses speech that exposes sin, then it rejects God himself. When you try to recover or reestablish a constitutional republic apart from this foundation, you're suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. You are guaranteeing tyranny. What they now brand as hate or contempt is really just an unvarnished proclamation of righteousness according to their own self-defined morality. Christians, though, must recover a theology of speech grounded in creation and redemption, where truth is love, conviction is compassion, and liberty is obedience to Christ. James 1:25, John 14:6. Okay, son. Anything else?
I think that's a good download for the people.
All right, let's cut it right there. If you'd like to support us, folks, look for the links in the description below this video. We would love to have your help in getting ourselves funded to be back with you here in 2026. That remains to be seen. We'd love to be here with you next year. Until next time, God bless, my friends. We'll see you next time.
God bless you guys. Thank you.
I called you up yesterday evening. I got a disconnected line. I think I know just what you're feeling. You've always been a friend of mine. I watched them strip you of your virtue. I saw the strain they made you bear. They took advantage of your promise and kept your God out of your prayers. America, I still love you, 'cause I'm a grandson of this place. Mississippi to Ohio, I got roots Plymouth to Jamestown, and I don't want to see your name erased. Caught a glimpse of you last weekend. Kids playing baseball in a field. Before the game they sang your anthem. Just know that most of us still love you. We'd take a bullet for your name. A million Charlie Kirks are out here, and we won't see you put to shame. America, I still love you, 'cause I'm a grandson of this place. Mississippi to Ohio, I got roots Plymouth to Jamestown, and I don't want to see your name erased. Well, it's been nice writing this letter, thinking on the memories we share. I've never seen you run from danger. You always went where no one dared. So I hope to see you sometime, when soaring eagles touch the sky, and you'll remember what you're here for. I promise I'll be by your side. America, I still love you, 'cause I'm a grandson of this place. Mississippi to Ohio, I got roots Plymouth to Jamestown, and I don't want to see your name erased. America, I still love you, I'm just a grandson of this place. Well, you've been down a couple rounds, but when you wake, they'll hit the ground.